Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of ModChat. For those who do not know, ModChat is my podcast I do here at least monthly in two different forms. First of all, it is available in a video visual form here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels, and it is available like an actual audio-only podcast, so you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to. Simply look up ModChat, all one word, in your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, like I said, ModChat is my podcast where I come on here at least once a month, and I talk to you all about things that I find new, interesting, cool, and maybe do a little bit of show and tell in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. So usually a lot of fun stuff there. And this episode is no exception here. We've had some pretty cool big developments. We have some new stuff that has been coming about that we've been looking into, and let's just go ahead and just get into the episode here. So the first thing here I'm covering isn't necessarily new. It was actually initially released in October 10th. However, I did still want to cover this here just because I thought this was a pretty cool new cosmetic hard mod for the original Xbox. This is from developer Dark183 or Dark1 Customs here, and this is the X sound. Now for the description here, it asks, ever wanted an Xbox startup sound? X sound brings it to the OG Xbox. With a compact ESP32S3 module that adds custom boot and eject sounds to your original Xbox. No more silent power-ups. Now you get that nostalgic audio experience with a modern web-based control. And of course built by Dark183 or Dark1 Customs. So essentially you have to make a boot and eject MP3 file for whichever sounds you're wanting. It does state these specifications right here. You're able to upload, delete, test these and such. And it also has its own onboard Wi-Fi and web server, so that way you can connect to the Wi-Fi connection it creates, and you're able to access everything on this site here, which is xsound.local. Now it does have information for building the firmware if you're wanting to do that, some of the libraries you'll need, the IDE setup, how to actually wire this up to your Xbox, the installation points, just the information on there, getting started, some troubleshooting steps, and of course the credits. So this is a pretty fleshed out README. On top of that, we can also get a look at the photos here. We do have this one right here, which isn't going to be the highest quality. However, we do have a few other options if we go into images and we just look at these here. So that's the back of the PCB. This is going to be the front of it right here. So you can see it's that printed circuit board, and then it has that microcontroller right there. I believe that's the ESP32 that they were talking about. So you have to get one of those soldered in, and then this way it's able to interface and connect to the Xbox once you wire it up. You also have the back of the printed circuit board as well as the front right here when it is completely unpopulated. As for the releases here, this is really just going to be the firmware, so you would have to build this out yourself unless you purchase it from Dark1, but it does have the bin files they are able to flash over to that blank board. However, if you're not wanting to build this out yourself, it looks like over on their own website here, they do offer this. So you can see right here, if you're even wanting to just buy this pre-assembled, all ready to go, it is $34.99. I'm just stating what is on here. Oh, and there's also a little speaker upgrade that they have as well too. As a heads up here, I'm just looking at this all. I don't have any affiliation with Dark1 or the website, not affiliated with them, not sponsored. I'm just showing this because this is a cool development. And there's also the installation guide right here, which is within the documents themselves. So if you're needing more of a visual, you have this all. It's pretty well laid out. There's pretty great photos. There's tips on here. And also this is what the interface looks like. So really cool to see. Awesome stuff right here. Now this here has been under wraps in development for a bit here, but in a surprise to many people here, XBMC ends up returning to the original Xbox with a new update here in 2025. Yeah, you heard that right. And I'm not talking about Cody, even though I am. This one is here branded as XBMC. This over on Xbox scene from the writer Go Team Scotch, but he states here, a new version of Xbox Media Center XBMC 4.0 has released. This version marks a significant update to the long-standing Media Center platform for the original Xbox. This marks the first major advancement to the software since 2016 and represents a renewed commitment to preserving, modernizing, and extending the compatibilities of one of the most iconic console homebrew applications ever created. XBMC has a long and influential sequential history. In 2002, Xbox Media Player, which was XMP, was released and turned the console into a powerful multimedia device fit for the living room in an era when connecting a computer to a TV was quite novel. Later that same year, XMP merged with YAMP and became Xbox Media Player 2.0. A few years later, the software evolved into Xbox Media Center, or XBMC, which introduced a new interface, a plugin system powered by Python, and a robust skinning engine. XBMC eventually became so capable that it outgrew the Xbox entirely. And this here, I would say, is where most people were familiar with it. Yes, it did have Xbox in the name there, but if we're being realistic, just like comparing numbers, I'm sure most people who have used XBMC did not use it on an original Xbox. Kind of funny how that works, but continuing on. By 2007, developers were working on PC ports, and in 2010, the project split into two branches, one for general computers, while the Xbox version became XBMC4XBOX, and each codebase was maintained from then on by separate teams. XBMC was later renamed to Kodi in 2014 and continues to be one of the most popular media center applications available. Even Plex traces its roots back to XBMC. This part I actually didn't know, but he states that Plex began as OS XBMC, a Mac port of XBMC in late 2007, before becoming its own project in 2008. This means the original Xbox helped shape not one, but two of the biggest media center apps used today. The last official release of XBMC for Xbox arrived in February 2016 with version 3.5.3. Although the community never declared the project dead, meaningful updates became scarce. XBMC 4.0 continues that legacy by bringing a modern interface, updating it to be more in line with Kodi's modern codebase, and backporting features to the original 64MB of RAM and Pentium 3 hardware where it all began. It is important to note, though, that this project is distinct and separate from XBMC for gamers, the game's focused variation of XBMC for Xbox version 3.5.3, developed by Rocky 5. Now, there were also some videos that were included here, so I think what I'll do is I'll have these running, and I'll be telling you all more from the article here directly. They do state here that one of the most notable advancements in XBMC 4.0 is the introduction of the Estuary User Interface, or skin. It did originally release in 2017 with Kodi version 17, which was the Krypton version. Scotch does say here that firing up an Xbox made in 2001 and being greeted by the same interface as what you'd find if you were to download Kodi today onto your PC feels like a bit of magic and helps keep this beloved classic console relevant and useful well into the modern era. There's also expanded games library support, so they're stating here that this introduces a fully realized games library system. This enhancement brings the same level of metadata support found in the movies and music sections to Xbox and emulated games, so titles can now display artwork, descriptions, and other metadata, transforming the games section into a polished and user-friendly library. It's also stated that the long-standing support for trainers remains intact, giving users the option to apply gameplay modifications for compatible titles, and emulated game collections benefit from this as well, with the ability to browse ROM libraries and launch them directly in a user's preferred emulator. This also does restore full functionality to metadata scrapers for movies and TV, which allows users to build rich libraries complete with artwork, plot summaries, cast listings, and other information retrieved directly from online sources. XBMC 4.0 handles these tasks efficiently, even on the Xbox's limited memory and processing power. Video playback continues to support 480p and 720p content, enabling the console to serve as a surprisingly capable media device for its age. Similar to Kodi, XBMC 4.0 supports filtering, building playlists, watch progress history for media, and intelligent handling of TV shows with seasons. Now, in terms of task scheduling and multitasking, it was stated that despite the constraints of the Xbox's single-threaded 733 MHz CPU, XBMC 4.0 includes improvements to task scheduling that allow multiple activities to run concurrently. Background library updates, metadata scraping, and audio-video playback can occur while users navigate and use other parts of the interface. These optimizations help ensure a fluid experience without compromising performance. Much work has been done under the hood to keep XBMC on task and within memory budgets while achieving multitasking on a console that wasn't exactly designed with it in mind. Users who own RAM and or CPU upgraded consoles can also take advantage of the extra overhead, as XBMC 4.0 makes use of the extra horsepower for an even smoother experience. Utilizing an SSD with higher UDMA speeds will also yield an improvement in overall responsiveness. There's also still a pretty nice music experience and visualizers right here here, like you could see with everything loading up. And one thing that's nice to see is that XBMC continues to support lossless codecs such as FLAC. That's pretty awesome right there. This also does have add-on and Python support right here, and they state that while the current version uses Python 2.7 for compatibility, work is underway to transition to Python 3.4.10 in the future, which may provide a path for backporting many newer Kodi add-ons. Even in its current state, XBMC 4.0 already supports a variety of community-developed add-ons that extend the system's functionality, including tools for online video playback, such as YouTube, online weather services, and enhanced media organization. Now, outroing this here, they do state that XBMC has been a staple of the original Xbox's homebrew scene since its inception in the early 2000s. This new update is a revival of the platform that helped shape the landscape of home media software and helps revitalize a codebase that has been somewhat stagnant for many years. This release honors that heritage while modernizing the experience for a new generation of enthusiasts and preserving the functionality of the original Xbox as a versatile and capable media center. Although the hardware is decades old, the renewed effort behind XBMC 4.0 demonstrates that the platform still has room to grow and tricks up its sleeve. With ongoing development and a codebase designed with modern Kodi compatibility in mind, XBMC 4.0 represents a significant step forward into the continued development on the original Xbox. The development team looks forward to continuing this work and expanding the possibilities of the original Xbox for many years to come. This version is the first of many to come, with lots of things cooking in the background. Keep an eye out for future releases by joining the Xbox Scene Discord and turning on notifications in the XBMC News channel, or by periodically checking the project's GitHub page. There is a download available here, which does point to the GitHub page. There is also a main project page right there, and they do state that this is in active development. This means updates will be released in a more frequent manner for the time being until things settle down. Check the nightly builds on GitHub for the most up-to-date version. Now, they are looking for some contributions as well, in which they are looking for any type of coding help, or if you can help out users. Support is being asked for on that as well. Localization to help translate XBMC add-ons, skins, anything like that, and of course add-ons. Now, to give credit where credit is due here, Nikola Antonik was the primary developer and project lead for XBMC 4.0. Asterivi was the contributor of CURL and Wolf SSL, also a tester and a debugger. Equinox being a contributor and a tester. Rocky5 also being a contributor and tester. Lavender Starlight Plus for add-on skin development as well as being a tester. Go Team Scotch being a tester and providing feedback, and finally Haguero for also being a tester and providing feedback. So that's all to say here. It looks like XBMC is back, so if you were looking for something like this to use on the original Xbox and you just wanted a more modern, more up-to-date, and more maintained version of XBMC, you got it right here. We're right back to where we started. In the best way, of course. Although I don't usually cover a ton related to the Switch on here, and this is a kind of typical Atmosphere custom firmware update, I still want to talk about this because there was some progress on here that people might want to be aware of. So this is from Cyrus M, the main developer and creator of Atmosphere custom firmware, and he stated on Twitter, "Happy June 15th, Atmosphere 1.10.0 is now in pre-release. Support was added for 21.0.0, which was the latest firmware that was just released here. But he did note this, saying, please note, all Homebrew may need to be recompiled with the latest libnx, else it may crash due to a Nintendo ABI change. See the release notes for details." Now, I want to put this in here because he did tweet a little more about this. For what it's worth, he also did state here an issue has been identified that causes the browser applets to error on 21.0.0. Sorry for missing this during testing. I will work to get this fixed as soon as possible. That's kind of why it's a pre-release. Now, he also stated here that the RO system module, loader system module, and kernel were updated in the pre-release zip to fix a crash when launching the browser due to increased memory use, and to fix the USB 3 force enable on 21.0.0. But he followed this up by saying, "I am not really sure what can be done about the memory available issue at this point, to be honest. I already picked the low-hanging fruit in 20.0.0. If you are a developer with bright ideas, please join the Reswitch Discord or reach out to me, Cyrus M, personally on Discord." And there was yet another update to the pre-release in which he stated, "The kernel was updated in the pre-release zip to fix a crash when launching the eShop Link Nintendo account pages. They should have been caught before, sorry." I will say Cyrus M is a very apologetic dude, but you know what? He's doing a lot of work here on this firmware, so he doesn't really have much to apologize for, but I understand he does take pride in his work here. Now, even looking at the changelog for the pre-release here, he is stating here, he's talked about, you know, the updates and such on this, but he also said that, of course, basic support was added for 21.0.0, but this is what he was talking about, which I've talked about in a previous update. It was actually when, I believe it was when 20.0.0 dropped, because that was a major firmware update. He did state here, as a result of changes made to Nintendo's software in 21.0.0, there is again roughly 10 megabyte less memory available for custom system modules. So that's where he was stating earlier that if you know what to do, if you have any ideas, join the Reswitch Discord or reach out to him personally. And he also said if anyone has any bright ideas, perhaps there will be another Atmosphere release which improves the memory availability situation for custom system modules, but I cannot actually think of anything viable at this time. And then with the Homebrew here, he does state all Homebrew software may need to be recompiled with the latest libnx, which has to be greater than or equal to 4.10.0, or else it may crash or experience memory corruption. He did explain this by stating that Nintendo broke the userland to kernel TLS ABI in 21.0.0 by writing to previously reserved space. Homebrew used this reserved space for its TLS slots, which means any Homebrew using TLS slots will experience memory corruption when running under Atmosphere 1.10.0. This doesn't appear to impact everything, but a large portion of tested Homebrew crashes, often on exit, so we'll need to recompile for the new ABI. For those technically inclined, while TLS slots are rarely used by developers, they're used to implement features like example C++ exceptions under the hood, and so anything using those crashes, etc. To help make this transition easier, HB Menu now shows a warning when selecting Homebrew compiled with an older incompatible ABI version. I apologize for the hassle in general, and libnx has been updated so that its reserved space matches Nintendo's now. This particular issue can never occur again, even if Nintendo touches more reserved space. So it's at least nice to see that that was future-proofed in some way. But again, I did want to talk about this here because this is a more substantial release due to the more substantial firmware version that was on here. So for anybody who's going to be updating, I'm just going to wait for this to come out of pre-release, and then I'm kind of just waiting for all the Homebrew and such, and it's really most Homebrew you could think about, whether it's applications, whether it's games, maybe it's overlays, things like that. So many things have had to be forked and recompiled if they were not recompiled by the authors, so I'm kind of just waiting to see what's happening there. Additionally, he also stated that support was added for launching another game which has too many files with ROM-FS mods. I rely on user reports for adding support and fixing these, and some of these games can be pretty obscure. If you are affected by this, you will see data abort 0x101 when trying to launch the game with mods. Please reach out to Cyrus M on Discord if this occurs to share your error report binary. But he does state here, although some games may be impossible to fix, I believe I can get almost everything working, so please let me try to help you and improve Atmosphere support if you run into this. And finally, of course, the most important point, general system stability improvements to enhance the user's experience. Now, in terms of PlayStation news, something pretty exciting here, and we can keep it short and sweet. This is from Andy Wynn, otherwise known as The Flow. He ended up stating here, "Rest in peace, my PlayStation exploit died," and he ended up linking to a gist on his GitHub page, which is some code we can take a look at. Now, he states that this works up to PS4 firmware 13.00 and PS5 firmware 12.00. It was patched on PS4 13.02 and PS5 12.02. So those are some nicer round numbers to keep in mind. But the nice thing is we now have a new kernel exploit which does work up to these firmwares, PS5 12.00 and PS4 13.00. Even if we take a look at the GitHub page here, you can see this is the file exploit net control implementation. I would think that's abbreviated for implementation.java, created in 2025 by Andy, and this is primarily meant to be used with BDJB. So while as we have a kernel exploit, and this is exciting, we don't have it in a jailbreak up to these firmwares just yet here, and that is what we are currently waiting on. So this would need to be implemented with userland exploits or entry points. So typically, like I've said several times on here, you are going to need your userland exploit, which will be used as the entry point. That could be something such as a hacked up save game, a exploit game of some kind, a WebKit exploit, a BDJB exploit. You then have to pair that up with a a kernel exploit, and once those two are chained together, that is what gives you the jailbreak. Now, although this here is different, this is a different entry point and it uses a different exploit here, people are of course looking to see if they'll be able to take that kernel exploit if and when, and then they can use that with other entry points. One of them that is worth visiting right now is actually Y2JB, which I talked about before. This is from developer Gajina, and this is the one which works for PlayStation 5, and it uses the YouTube application as an entry point. Well, there's been some nice updates to it here, and if we check out the releases, you could see we are at 1.2.1 at the moment, but the 1.2 change was a pretty big one here because it ended up adding the Lapse implementation. It also added the ELF loader, the GPU RW, and the DL sim implementations, and it also reorganized code to be more modular. Now, there was the quick 1.2.1 change in which it states that the YouTube update blocker was added to the 1.21 backup, but it also does note that the new download0.dat does not contain the YouTube update blocker. So if you're using an old version of BDJB, you have to use this app.info.editor.python script in order to manually add the YouTube update blocker. Now, I have covered this here in the previous episode, and if you have seen that before with a quick comparison, you could see that there is a lot more information that's fleshed out here in terms of not just setting, these settings here. That was already there before, but now talking about why 127002 is required, and it's stating this is actually critical for Y2JB to run properly. It discusses, of course, the fake account activation. It just fleshes out a little more, it seems, and then this information here on how to block YouTube updates and even how to escape from the YouTube soft lock. So there's a lot more information here that we have on hand as more and more people have been using this. Over on their Twitter page, they did have this release here when 1.2 came out. This was again the significant one because it ended up adding Lapse, and if you don't know what that is, Lapse is the kernel exploit right here, which means that now you can just download set up Y2JB, and that is a complete jailbreak package right there, which is pretty nice. But if you come over here, let's check this out. They did end up uploading a video. So right from the beginning, playing it here, but you could see they fire up the YouTube app, and let's just wait a bit. So you see this here, yup, debug Y2JB 1.2 by Gajina. This is on firmware 6.02, debug PSN dialog disabled, safe to close PSN sign out dialog now, which this is, as you can see, the PSN sign out dialog, so they're going to hit OK, it seems. There we go, the remote JS loader is loading up, and that is the IP it's running on, as well as the port number. We can wait a little bit longer. And there we go. Y2JB Lapse 1.0 by Gajina, and you see a lot more information right here. So even if we look in the background, we have the stage 1 double free AIO has run, stage 2 leak kernel addresses, stage 3 double free SCE kernel AIO read write request. Let's see what else happens. Stage 4, get arbitrary kernel read write, which that is the exciting part here. And stage 5 is PS5 post exploitation. So we can wait here. We got that. It was able to load this in, serving the elf loader, spawning elfloader.elf, bootstrapping elfloader.elf. I guess it's actually in the opposite order here, but Lapse finish closing Y2JB. There should be a bit more, so now we're at the main screen. There we go. ETA hint is starting, do not exit, loading case stuff, and welcome to case stuff. So we have that loaded in. ETA toolbox auto start is disabled, so that's just letting us know about that. And then ETA hin has loaded up. You could see the IP address, the FTP port, as well as the kernel log port. So we have a whole AIO hin right there. So there we go. It did take longer because I was pausing it several times just to show and explain everything and kind of state what was going on. But you could see I'll just let it play out as is. But within 30 seconds, once you have this set up, all you have to do is launch the YouTube application, and once you get this all sent over, there you go, you have your jailbreak. After the jailbreak's loaded in, you got the elf loader. You have, let's see, there we go, case stuff with ETA hin. So that's the difference on PS5, at least. There's like several more components that you have to kind of like piece together in order to get to this process. But once you have it, I mean, boom, you have a jailbroken PlayStation 5 and you have your whole environment right there. So pretty nice to see. But that's certainly not all here, because I was considering at one point, I never said this out loud really until now, but I was wondering when I saw the YouTube application be used as an entry point, one of the first thoughts that came to mind was, okay, if YouTube is exploitable, could other media applications be exploitable? And it seems like that is true. That's possible here. This from developer Earth Onion, and this here is Netflix and Hack. And it states here that this takes advantage of Netflix for PS5 requesting JavaScript from localhost. Using a man-in-the-middle attack, we can inject and execute our own JavaScript into the error screen. So this here is another entry point, a userland exploit right here, using an application incredibly similar to Y2JB. It even states here yet again in the main README here, inject custom JavaScript into the Netflix PS5 error screen by intercepting Netflix's requests to localhost. It does work from firmware's 4.03 all the way up to 12.xx, and they did link the application over here. This is just the lowest working version that you would need there. So for the instructions, it looks like it has a good setup here, and I'm just looking at the releases as well too. I'm curious about this, so this will just make a little more sense for what we're looking at. This is the external storage images and system backups here, but these are the ones that already have Netflix and Hack already set up on them. So you see there's all these 7-zip archives here. You have just a Netflix system backup, but you also have them ranging from 256 gigabytes all the way up to 4 terabytes. If you're wondering what these are all going to be for, well, let's just look at the README here and we can see what's going on. There's a couple ways to set this up here. One of them is doing a M.2 drive setup, and the downside is this does wipe your M.2 drive. But it also states here that this only works on PS5s that have an activated account, a real PSN account or a fake PSN activated account via a jailbreak. So essentially, if you have your system activated either legitimately or using a fake activation, you could do the M2 drive setup. Otherwise, you could also do this, but if you just don't have an activation or you haven't jailbroken your PS5 before, you can use the system backup method. But essentially, the M.2 drive setup requires you to take one of those downloads for your drive. So for example, if you have a 4 terabyte drive, you're going to download the 4 terabyte image file. You end up extracting that, and then you hook up that M2 SSD to your computer and you flash it with the image that you downloaded from the releases page right here. So that's what those ones are for. From there, at that point, you could take that M2 drive that has been imaged, you can install it physically in your PS5, and once that's done, it seems you can then view the Netflix app, which has already been modified and exploited. Then you can move the app from your M2 storage to your console storage, and then you can reformat the drive to continue using it. But if you don't want to do that, or if you can't do that, you could also do a system backup restore, which is what we've seen with Y2JB, and it even states this will wipe all existing games and saves from your PS5. So the downside is there is going to be a little bit of destructiveness here with each method. If you have an activation available, you could do this with the M2 drive. You're just going to have to back up your data since it's going to wipe it in the process. But if you cannot do that at all, or you don't want to get an M2 drive, you are going to have to wipe your PS5 in order to set this up here. And this is just really a process of taking the backup, putting it onto a USB drive, and then restoring it using the official system steps to restore your system. And quite similar to Y2JB, it will be different numbers, but you have to go in, you're going to have to manually modify your internet connection here. And it looks like there is a proxy setting that you have to apply, and you have to provide these numbers here. This would be the IP address, and this would be the port that you're connecting to. But either way, this is nice to see another free and just completely software-based exploit on here. You will have to do that restore in some way, but you could see it works up to pretty high firmwares right here as well too. And again, this is just a userland exploit, meaning that in order to really gain a fuller access to the system, this would have to be paired and chained with a kernel exploit in order to become a full jailbreak. Oh, but we're not done here at all. No. We have even another entry point here, which this one did surprise me, but I'm sure it was definitely welcomed here. This is Ren'py from developer Hello Yunhon, and this here is yet another Ren'py PlayStation exploit. Now it states here that this exploit is a userland exploit. Don't expect Homebrew enabler level of access. So again, you have your entry point right here essentially, but this here is similar to the Lua based games that we've seen. And in case you do not know about that, there's several games out there that are visual novels which use Lua scripts. And these are PS4 games, which what you can do is you can take these games, you can then modify these save files on them, and from there you can turn the modified saves into entry points, which you can again pair with a kernel exploit, and you can then use that game and load up that save to jailbreak your system. The downside was with those Lua games is that they're pretty much all Japanese, they're all visual novels, and really anyone outside of Japan would need to import them. However, these games here end up using the Ren'py engine, which let me actually look into that. It's been a while since I've looked into this here. Oh yeah, you know, I'm actually a little more familiar with this, and I've played several of these games as well too. So Ren'py, as it states here, is a visual novel engine. So, you know, if this is the way that people are going to get introduced to more visual novels, I'm for it. I'm going to support this here. But probably the most famous or infamous one would be Doki Doki Literature Club. You know, if that becomes an exploitable game, that will be a pretty easy one to pick up, thankfully. Either way, there's two supported games right now. One of them is A Year of Springs, and the other one is Arcade Spirits, The New Challengers, and they do have the specific game IDs right here, which are going to be compatible. So just keep that in mind. As opposed to looking for the actual name, you are going to have to make sure you get one of these matching IDs for your game, and these are going to depend on which region you're getting the game from. Now, at the end of these episodes, what I like to try and do is I like to try and pick something cool, interesting, random, what have you in the world of video game modding and video game console modding here. And I thought this was pretty on the nose as well too. And you know what? Someone who I'm able to cite here again. This is from yet again Andy Wynn, or The Flow, who has been known for so many big developments across multiple PlayStation scenes. But this took me for surprise. I'm sure it also surprised him as well too. And he seemed to be pretty mind blown here, but he stated, "Wow, Don Tolliver seems to enjoy my hacks and GTA San Andreas port on the PS Vita." And if you look at this photo right here, if you're like watching the visual of it, it looks like here this is a Instagram story from Don Tolliver, and it just shows presumably him right here playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on the PlayStation Vita. The only possible way, the only way to really make this happen like this here, especially because I'm sure you all can tell, this is like being natively played. It's not being streamed or anything from a PS4 or a PS5. Really, the only way to natively make it happen like this exact build right here is you have to have a modified Vita, and you have to be using the Flow's work here in order to make this happen. That's pretty cool when it's a huge artist like this who's just casually enjoying the modding scene and posting it up like this. That's awesome. Either way, that is about it for this episode of ModChat. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully there was something useful, entertaining, cool, what have you, and you got to learn a little bit of something. And if you did learn something along the way, fantastic. And if not, well, maybe next time. Who knows? Either way, if you got to the end of this episode, what I like to do is I like to use a keyword or a key phrase at the end of one of these episodes. But either way, I like to do this because if you use it in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. So still going with the theme of picking something off of my desk, you know, actually, this will be fun, right? I originally wasn't even going to pick this here, but I was like, wait a minute, I like this. You know what? We're gonna go with this. Not specifically this here in particular, like the actual item, but I guess like the genre of item as well too. And by the way, if anybody knows what this is, yeah, I've had one of these for a while. Absolutely fantastic, great release, and an absolute shame this is not and probably will never get onto streaming services. But this is the box set Salival by Tool. Favorite band, I've talked about them here and there, and if you follow the channel for long enough, you might know that they're just like a little bit of lore. But either way, this is the one and only box set that they did. This is here relevant to a video that I am going to be working on, so you'll all get maybe like a little bit of a tease. But how about that? Are you a box set collector? What is your favorite box set? Did you ever get any of those big audio box sets, or I guess any TV show box sets? Those are good ways of getting a lot of episodes of a TV show for pretty affordable prices at this point now, with how they're kind of going. But yeah, let's just go ahead and go with that. You know, I could drone on about this, but if you use the keyword box set in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end. Either way, that is about it for this episode of ModChat. Let's go ahead and sign this one out here. If you enjoyed it, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next time.